We talked basically all Oregon, Ohio State in hour one, the atmosphere, game day, and we ended the first hour with validation. Was kind of my non-fan college football observer takeaway of just, you knew it was good. Everybody that's a Duck fan has, I think, shared your sentiment of like, I know this guy's good. But in sports, you kind of just, you need that, right? You need that one thing that says yes. Like you beat Utah, you beat UCLA. Those are good wins.
Mm-hmm.
But
this is different.
This is a different animal.
Totally
and
different.
So it's like you have maintained the opinion of look at the recruiting, look at the record sub Washington, like look at all of this stuff. And mostly people are like, beat a real team. And I thought the validation thing, that was just my takeaway is you needed confirmation for how you felt internally to say, see, this is what I'm talking about. And I think team building aspect of that also won him the game. You talk about the mix of portal and recruiting. I mean, no Jordan Birch. And so you've got a defensive line mixed with recruits and portal guy.
2 true sophomores on the edge.
And
a couple
Derek
of transfers on the interior.
Just destroyed.
Caldwell had a big game as well.
Caldwell had a big game as well, yes. And so you look at that. You look at the wide receiver position, right? Evan Stewart. Oh, my God. Trayshawn Holden spit on somebody. That was crazy. He overcame that.
What are we doing?
Early interception with Bassa, not ruled an interception.
Yeah.
It was ruled a catch. Very confusing. You know, you give up a touchdown on that drive. But just everything about Oregon's win was team-building concept of he's hitting the right buttons for what his roster needs, right? The portal, massive for them, and then sprinkled all around with depth and starting is the recruiting for Dan Lanning.
He has hit home runs in recruiting at certain positions, and he's hit home runs in the transfer portal at other positions. And I think that was the reality on Saturday night, that without both of those pieces and the synergy between them, you don't win this game. You just want to look at the transfer portal, for example. The idea of bringing in Dylan Gabriel was for a game like this, and can he play his ass off? Guess what? He was phenomenal on Saturday night. The idea
he was better than Will Howard, by the way. I'll acknowledge what you said Friday. Will Howard was good. Gabriel was great.
And he was better with his legs, which was a surprise to me because we talked all week about Will Howard running, and that was going to be a difference maker in the game. And Dylan Gabriel was the one that had the long touchdown run.
It took him forever to do it, and I was like, are you going to move? You can move.
I know.
And he finally did it.
There were a lot of looks, too, where he was handing the ball off and kind of booting the fake, and it was like, dude, there's a – keep it. It's some, and then he did it in a big moment.
He was building it, though,
He totally was. Without Evan Stewart, you don't win that game. Without Derek Harmon, you don't win that game. And then on the flip side of that, from a recruiting standpoint, the way your edge rushers played on Saturday night was incredible. Mateo Uiagalelei had a coming out party in front of the country. That kid is a true sophomore, and he is a beast. And when you lose a guy like Jordan Birch, I said it last week, you don't want to ever have a player of that caliber go down. He's arguably their best defensive lineman. He's an NFL player, and he has been a monster the last 2 weeks. But if there is an area where Lanning has recruited and portaled so well that you can maybe overcome it, it is the defensive line. Like if Jabbar Muhammad goes down, it's a different conversation because he's your number one corner, and he had another nice night on Saturday and maybe was the best corner on the field. But when you have a defensive lineman go down, there's that belief of like they have recruited so well there. It's just a question of can those young pups step up and have a big game, and they both did. And so this is all about roster construction and pressing the right buttons. And I think Saturday night proved that Dan Lanning's been doing that.
They didn't have Jordan Birch, and they lost Trayshawn Holden early in the game because he spit on an Ohio State player.
One of the dumbest things I've ever seen.
I mean, just idiotic. I
couldn't tell what happened. So that was so weird in the press box because all of a sudden a flag comes in late, and then there's just an Ohio State player down in the left end zone. You can't really, and then he walks over, and you're like, I had no clue what was happening.
Well, nobody on TV did either because nobody saw it until they replayed
No,
it.
and then the crowd was so loud that you couldn't even hardly hear the ref half the time when he's making announcements. And I didn't see that he got ejected until I was scrolling Twitter, and I'm like, wait, what? He got tossed? And then I watched it later, and I saw him through his helmet. That was ridiculous.
I don't mind the throwing helmet. He was probably pissed at himself in the tunnel. I was like, why did I just do this? He sent out a statement. May have been Chat GPT'd. Here was Dan Lanning, though. They lost a couple guys. Here was Dan Lanning in the post game. Next man up.
You know, in football, it's about the next man up. And I know Jordan's probably sitting at home just as proud of these guys being able to do next man up mentality. You know, we thought there might be a chance that we would be able to, see him out there. We weren't able to see him out there, but we always want to protect our players first. And Jordan is just, you talk about the year that young man's having. I hurt for him because I know how much he wanted to be a part of this moment. But talk about next man up, right? And some guys showed up tonight.
Oh, they didn't just show up. I thought they completely altered and changed Ohio State's game plan. I think that's probably what surprised me the most. Now, there was different moments. This was such a weird game I was texting with one of your friends who is coincidentally a Gonzaga and Oregon fan. What a weird world.
And he roots against Oregon in basketball. It's a whole thing.
It's a very weird
I don't let him
thing.
off the hook there.
But I was texting with him early, and I was like, I feel like Ohio State's the better team, but they've farted around, and they're in a game. And then the game was getting kind of to the second half, and you could feel it swing, and then Oregon ends and they win. And so it's a weird game of feeling like one team may be better than the other, but then the other team comes back, they feel like they're better than the other. It was a toss-up game, but I thought one of the underrated things, Dirt, I thought they changed everything Ohio State wanted to do. Trayvon Henderson had 10 carries. Judkins had 11. Go look at Ohio State's box score stuff. They want to run the football. And I thought the defensive line for Oregon completely tweaked it and made Chip put him into passing situations.
The numbers behind that are incredible. And if you would have told me this on Friday, I probably would have laughed at you and said, like, are you taking my talking points? There's no way they're going to do that. So in the first half, Ohio State had 21 carries for 122 yards, okay? 70 of those yards came on 2 carries. Henderson had the one drive where he broke 2 runs. Yeah. One of them was like 20, one of them was like 50. And he had 2 carries for 70 yards on that drive. The rest of the game for Henderson, he had 8 carries for 17 yards. In the second half of that game, when they were going to try and lean on Oregon, they scored first. They retook the lead, forced the punt from Oregon early. Like, they had the momentum on their side. In the second half of the football game, Ohio State had 12 carries for 19 yards as a team. 12 carries for 19 yards, and Oregon arguably didn't have their best defensive lineman. These games, and we talk about it ad nauseum leading into it, they're won and lost at the line of scrimmage, and that's always been the area that Oregon has fallen short. They've had flash, they've had substance, they've had speed, they've had athleticism, all of that. But when they play a big dog, they get bullied at the line of scrimmage. It happened in the national championship against Ohio State. That's the difference. And on the defensive line, for them without Birch to do that, they didn't have much of a consistent pass rush. That's where they really missed him, and Will Howard had a lot of time to throw. Got after him a little bit late in the game in some key situations.
You guys kind of started putting pressure on him.
Started to find some combinations there, but early in the game, he had a pretty clean pocket, but look, you're not going to be perfect. The fact that they took away but they limited the main strength of Ohio State's offense, it unquestionably changed their game plan. And I know that they came in thinking we're going to be able to run the football on them.
Yeah.
12 carries for 19 yards in the second half is remarkable from one of the best, running back tandems that exists in the country.
I want to give you a lot of credit. I asked you on Thursday's show, what is the number Oregon scores or has to score for them to win? And I have a prediction that you gave, I think from the pregame, or this is from the postgame, whatever your prediction was.
I am.
It says you predicted 31-27 on the show. You actually said if they score 31 or more.
That was one shy. They needed
you
32.
Think they win.
They needed 32.
No, but you were right.
Yeah.
Like, they scored 32. You said 31 or more. They were 1 point better, and they ended up winning by 1 point. And so, like, this game was so back and forth. Not only what they did defensively against the rush for Ohio State, the other part of this that was a little eye-opening, Ohio State came in with a pretty respected defense, and Oregon had 8 explosive plays, 20 yards or more in the game.
Yeah, they were launching the ball all over the field.
I felt like every time Evan Stewart caught the football, he was 40 yards up the field. Yeah. Denzel Burke is, in many people's estimation going into Saturday, a day 1 or maybe very early day 2 cornerback. And he got put on an island, and he got embarrassed.
He got torched all night.
I thought, if I had to rank it, I would say in order of who had the worst Saturday. Ryan Day 1. Denzel Burke 2.
Yeah.
Ohio State fan 3. Like, I thought Denzel Burke, his draft stock had to have plummeted somewhat from what his performance was. Oregon took it to Ohio State's defense, and I just didn't expect him to have that many explosives.
Well, and I think on top of that, too, what allowed them to be able to do that was the biggest surprise far and away in the entire game for me. And it's not even close. And it's the way your offensive line played. There was I wasn't
unsung heroes of the game.
Without a doubt, I was not completely abandoning ship after the Boise game. In fact, I came in and was slightly confident on that Monday after that game because I felt like they found some things in the second half that they could turn into success down the road. But not even I, in the most optimistic state of minds that I've ever been in, did I think their offensive line would play at that level against what is unquestionably on paper one of the best defenses in college football. The numbers that Ohio State has put up, I don't care about the opponents this year, have been insane. They were giving up 6 points per game. They have NFL draft prospects all over their defense. They have 2 of the best edge rushers in the entire sport. Your point on the secondary, that is one of the best defenses in the country. And it is one of the best defenses in the country. It was just a reminder that, oh, yeah, that's right. Oregon is incredibly talented. But if there was an area that they were going to fall short, I figured it would be they would struggle to run the football and they struggle to protect Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel was not sacked in this game. He was hardly even touched. They got a couple of pressures in key situations, but for the most part had a clean pocket. And you talk about those launches down the field and the explosive plays, those take time to develop. You have to have 4 seconds, give or take, in order to get rid of those, and he was throwing balls on the money, and so all the attention will go to Gabriel and Stewart, and rightfully so, because they were awesome. They don't happen without the offensive line setting a clean pocket, allowing the protection, and allowing Gabriel to throw the football downfield. They were unquestionably the MVP of that game for me, from a group a month ago that we were wondering, is this the worst Oregon offensive line we've seen in however many years? They can't block against Idaho. They can't block against Boise.
Yeah.
They were phenomenal on Saturday night.
Poncho had like 2 snaps that were a little
That's his
questionably
issue.
high.
He kind of dribbled one to him.
Yeah.
He had one that was high that went over his head and one that Gabriel caught and was able to recover.
But as we noted from the Oregon State-Oregon game, they had a group. They had success. They carried it over against UCLA, Michigan State, and so they built for 3 straight games. Continuity, chemistry, consistency.
Yep.
I'm not as good or keen on watching this stuff as I think you are, so I give you credit. They didn't make any changes on the offensive line during the game, right? It was the same
They still
group.
don't have Bedford still out, the guy that we
Who
all
cares?
said we need
Who
him to be
cares?
back in order for the offensive line to play
Harper's
good.
fine. You're okay.
Yeah.
Sawyer, Tuamalau, 2 massive names that decided to come back for this season to make it special.
First-round NFL draft picks.
To beat Michigan, to win a national championship. These are considered in the conversation of best edge rushers in America. 5 total tackles. No sacks, total tackles. And by the way, 2. Sawyer had 2 assisted. Had no solo tackles, 2 assisted tackles. Tuamalau had a play late. He had 3 total tackles. All 3 were solo. That's just a remarkable job by an offensive line that after 2 weeks in the season, everybody was going, oh my God, they're going to cost us 3 to 4 games.
Yes.
You want duck receipts? Go look at Twitter from Duck Twitter after 2 weeks.
I got text messages from buddies saying we're going to lose 4 games this year.
People were out on this. This team, oh, I'm not buying. Season's over. Like, okay, they have found it now. And to get to a point where Tuamalau and Sawyer are limited to 5 total, only 2 assisted from Sawyer, man, that speaks volumes, I think, of what Oregon was able to do.